Jeanniey Fielding is one of the most active pre-seed investors around, having invested in over 300 companies as the very first check. Having had startups of my own, I know how critical that first check is. Jeanniey is the co-founder and managing partner of the fund. Jeanniey has built a thriving community of over 500 founders and operators who help source diligence and invest in the next generation of startups across three core verticals: money, health, and work. Jeanniey joins us now to help be the best in our business. Thanks so much for being on the show, Jeanniey.
Thanks for having me.
So, Jeanniey, you've gone from lawyer to startup to investor. Tell me, what's your journey been like for you?
Yeah, it's definitely not been a linear path. Started out pretty corporate, so went to law school and had, a very different kind of career plan, I think. And ultimately found myself working at a big bank, and nights and weekends I spent kind of, tinkering on the side some ideas that I had. So when I started my first company, I didn't really set out to start a startup. I wanted to solve a problem, right? And so like many entrepreneurs, we're empaths, right? We see something in the world that just doesn't resonate and we want to fix it. So in 2008, a long time ago, I started my first company, nights and weekends, and that really turned into kind of a lifelong career in tech.
What is the current state of tech, startups, and that macro environment right now?
Yeah, so the last few years have been total boom years for tech, very different than when I started my first company or when you started yours. There's been so much money kind of piling into the verticals, and we've seen just everyone wants to get into tech. So venture capitalist funds have flourished, founders on every corner. And so in the last 9 months, we've had a real reset, and that's had, big implications for the tech ecosystem. And we're seeing it domino through larger companies with layoffs that we're hearing about, down to, the small companies that we fund. So the whole ecosystem is contracting now. The truth is, it was quite overinflated. And so in a way, this reset is very healthy. But obviously, if you're going through it, it's quite painful. And so that's where we are right now, in this kind of precarious place where things are being reset. And, I think the good founders are going to rise to the top.
It's such a smart way to think about the future going forward, and pretty much the only positive way you can think about that, especially if you're a new startup or if you're an early stage entrepreneur. So let me ask you a question about your personal investing. If you're looking to fund a business, or if you're giving advice to somebody who's looking to land an investor, what's the number one piece of advice you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, you have to figure out what type of company you want to start. And so in the last few years, everyone has thought venture capital is for me. But the truth is, venture capitalists are really funding high growth, highly scalable companies, mostly software companies, right, where they can see incredible multiples. And so many of the people that kind of pitch me their ideas, because I literally get thousands of pitches probably every week, a lot of those companies can be like really impressive, cool companies, but they're probably not going to reach kind of unicorn status or be, on a path to, say, an IPO. And so the first thing, the first piece of advice I like to give founders is really figure out where you are in the stack, right? Are you building a high growth company, which would require something like venture capital, or are you building a smaller business, which kind of is a misnomer because it can still get pretty, big, but there's different types of capital that you access for different types of businesses.
What advice would you give to a founder that's been looking for money for a while, hasn't been really successful because of the environment, has a great idea though? Do you think the advice is going to be just stay at it? Do you think the advice is maybe you should pivot? How do you approach those questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, if you're building a high growth company, there's still a lot of capital out there, right? So venture capitalists have raised records amounts of money over the last few years. And so, you just have to, find those investors. So how do you do that? I like to say, it's a numbers game. So you've got to fill like top of the funnel. So think about, raising capital the same way you would do sales, right? So the more top of the funnel that you have, the better conversion you're going to have. And so you've got to just do a lot of primary research. You've got to get, warm introductions from other people in the ecosystem. And then you've just got to get out there and meet as many people as possible.
Build that network, right? The number one piece of advice you gave me so many years ago,
Exactly.
and it's so true. You've done it all. You've been a lawyer. You've had your own startup. You're funding startups. You're just amazing. And I can't thank you enough for coming today and being on the show, because there's so many people that are looking to start a business that are entrepreneurs that will use this advice. So thanks so much for being on Liftoff.
Thanks for having me.
I cannot think of a better way to end today's show than with the inspiration of getting out there and not giving up and getting the money you need to grow your business. If you're interested in hearing more about all aspects of life and making the most of your personal and professional life, stay tuned. And do not forget to follow us on social media at Liftoff with Jeanniey. We've got tips, resources, and other information for you there. I'm Jeanniey Walden. See you next time.
The proceeding was sponsored by Liftoff Enterprises, LLC.